Drew Dinkmeyer here of DailyRoto with a tutorial of our NBA Optimizer. This is part of the premium NBA package over at DailyRoto.com. The first thing when you get to the Optimizer page from our NBA dropdown, you will see the ability to choose a slate. From here we have Fanduel, DraftKings, Yahoo, all available for users to be able to optimize off of. From there, once you pick the slate, you'll see this Run Optimizer button shows up in the bottom right. When you have been done making all of your edits and adjustments, you are able to optimize there. There are quite a few features of our optimizer, so we'll try to be as concise as possible while working through this. The first and foremost, all of the projections here are powered by the team at DailyRoto. They are also all customizable. So you see these fields for usage rate, rebound rate, assist rate, minutes. They're all editable, meaning as you adjust the rates or the minutes, a player's projection will move. So for example, if you take Russell Westbrook from 37 to 39 minutes, his projection will go from 56 to 59 points. You can always use the undo button to go back to DailyRoto's original baselines. You can also save any edits that you make so that they will be taken into account when you come back to the page later. As well as player individual edits, you can also make team level edits. So if you think Oklahoma City is going to score more than 118 points, you can boost their implied total. If you think they're going to have more than 45.7 rebounds, you can bump their rebounds. That will also move the player's projection. Once again, you can toggle the undo to go to the original or save from there. So while all of our projections are customizable, you can edit to your heart's desire. You can also filter on players by taking players out of the player pool by unchecking them or going all and keeping them all in. You can do this by position. You can filter all sorts of different ways. You can filter by projection. You can filter by value, all sorts of filters on all of these settings. Up in the upper right hand, you'll see where we have groups, team limits, and settings. These are all global constraints that you can put on your optimized pool. So if we go to settings, we open up this tab. You can set individual exposure limits. You can set these by position, or you can set them on the individual player as well. If you go back to this category exposure percentage, you can choose what the maximum amount of exposure you'd have of a player in a set. So if you took Russ Westbrook down to 10% and you ran 20 lineups, he would only be allowed to enter 2 lineups as an example. So you can do this globally by position. You can also do it by all. And if you type 50% and then hit all, it'll filter to all those and you'll see all the players come down to 50% as well. Again, you can save here if you like. We'll go back to 100% just for the purpose of this one. Uniques is the number of players that are unique in each lineup that is created. On FanDuel, we have a default of 2, and the reason is on FanDuel, the drop score requirement will make it that if you have a default of 1, you might get the same lineup just rotating a drop score through because it will technically have the same projected points. So we start with a unique level of 2. Shuffle is a feature that we have added that is designed to increase a little bit of the spread or sample of the distribution of plays. So essentially the way Shuffle works is every time a player is in a lineup, they become a little bit less likely to be in the next lineup. And this is used if you want to have more of a spread of some of the plays, and in plays that are projected just 1 point apart won't be so substantially different in terms of your exposure levels. So the Shuffle, it goes in increments of 5. And usually I use this somewhere between 15 to 20 depending on the slate, depending on the sport, so on and so forth. On FanDuel, we have a 9th man setting, and what this does is it's set at 0, and what it means is 0 with FanDuel in the drop score, your 9th player will count 0% in the lineup that they in terms of the optimized total points. So this is counting for like a true drop. But if you want to, say, increase the floor of that 9th man player, you could go all the way up to 100%, and now you're optimizing off 9-man lineups instead of 8-man lineups, because the 9th man will count 100% of his score. If you went to 15, that would mean 15% of that 9th player's score would count towards the overall score. And what this will do is this will bring a little bit of a better floor into play should you choose to use it on that 9th man. Desired lines is simply the number of lineups you'd like to create. Minimum projection is if you'd like to set a threshold that you have no players in your lineup with a projection below a certain level. Same thing for minimum minutes, you can do that. Salary distribution ranges that you can control as well. Submit all players. This is simply if you want to have all of the players in the player pool, that would be players that are projected with 0 points included in the submission. It will run that way. It just runs a little bit slower, so we naturally have this hidden out. And then there's different views. You can slide around the games in different views and see the projections differently, however suits your eye. We also have the ability to show stats. The output will show the actual points, rebounds, assists that we're projecting for the individual players, should you be interested in that. The basic in custom will just show the editable fields or the salary, the points, and the projection there. The other area that we have is in these projections, we not only have our standard base projections, but we have range of outcome projections. And within the settings tab, you can choose to optimize by the 10th percentile outcomes, the 75th percentile outcomes, so on and so forth. This is helpful for tournaments if you want to emphasize players that have wider range of outcomes and are more volatile players. This will take that into account with the range of outcomes projection. So you can optimize off any data set that you choose, standard 10th percentile, 25th percentile, 50th percentile, 75th, 90th, so on and so forth. We'll go back to standard for this point. From there, if you get into any trouble, in case of emergency, you can clear player bumps, team bumps, all bumps, or clear all in the settings tab as well. Team limits, you simply have the ability to edit the min or max number of players you'd like to include from each team on your set. So if you used one minimum Denver player, you would get at least one nugget in every lineup. You can once again save those up here. Groups is one of the cool features that we've added during the course of the year, is the ability to create rules around your sets. So if you were playing a really, really large slate and you said, hey, I don't want to have Russell Westbrook and Paul George in the same lineup, you could create a rule that says at most one of Russ or Paul George. You could then save that as well. If you wanted to say you wanted to have both of them paired together in all your lineups, you could, or at least one of them in all your lineups, you could say at least one in all your lineups. You can also do things with key players as well. So you can say, hey, every lineup I have that has Russell Westbrook, I'd like to bring it back with Nikola Jokic because I want to create a little bit of a game stack there. So this is saying, every lineup that has Russell Westbrook in it will have at least at most exactly one of Nikola Jokic, or you can, do a whole bunch of Nuggets players here, Murray, Barton, so on, Millsap, so on and so forth. And you can say every lineup that has Russ, I have it at most or at least one of those players. You can also double key, which is something that we've added that's really interesting and really cool. So you could say lineups that have Westbrook and Paul George, both players are keyed. You just choose them both as a key. We'll have, let's say, 2 Nuggets on them because you want to create a game stack here. So you can do things like this as well. And those rules will be taken into account. So this is a great way to be able to create a bunch of constraints on your overall player pool. It's more likely to use on larger slates than smaller slates because larger slates you have more options to choose from, and you might say, hey, like on an 11 game slate, I don't want Russ and Paul George paired together because they're so expensive and they might cannibalize each other's production or things like that. So there's lots of rules that you can kind of make to set up your player pool and also to create correlation within them. From there, once you have your rules set, your constraints set, you can run the optimizer and you will get this little processing bar that gives you an idea of how long it's taking to process the lineups. In this case, it was pretty quick with just the 3 game slate here. From there, you will get player exposures in this players tab. So you'll see Russell Westbrook is in every single one of these lineups. And you'll see as a result, because we had that rule that every lineup that had Russ had 1 Nugget player, you'll see a Nugget player in every one of these Russ lineups. And if we see any Russ and Paul George lineups, I'm not sure we have any Russ and Paul George lineups. We do not, because we do not have any Paul George here. You would have seen 2 Denver players in there as well. So from this page, you can still edit if you want to edit. And this will also show what percentage of the lineups the player is considered to punt. You can see on Fanduel, the punt player is X'd out here, and they are not counted in our score because our 9th man is 0. But if we had that ninth man at 100, it would have them counted in the overall score if you added all these up. It shows you the salary used, the total projection of the, in this case, 8 players in the ninth man times 0, all summed up. And you can edit player exposures here. So let's say you think, oh, that's way too much Will Barton. I only want 50% Will Barton. You can edit that here. And when you go back to restart and rerun, you will see Will Barton has a exposure limitation on him of 50%. So you can do things like that within the optimizer. One other feature of the optimizer that we added over the course of time here, along with the double keys, is the ability to actually look back at previous slates. So if you want to go back to Monday, February 25th slate, you can simply click on these arrows up here, choose the date range, and you'll be able to see a past slate and see how you would have played it, what the results would have been, so you can compare, or you can just optimize on the results themselves to see how you want. So once again, you go back here and you can see on Monday, our projections did update pretty late with a change in starters for the Mavericks. But within the settings tab, you can choose the actual, and this will be the actual results on the day, how everybody did. And you can see the very top lineups based on that. So on this Monday, the 25th slate, Karl-Anthony Towns was the high scorer, followed by Andre Drummond, LeBron James, Cody Zeller with quite the performance there. So you can optimize off those and see the results there. But you can also just optimize off of, hey, I ran these 75th percentile, and you can see these settings have carried over from what I actually ran on that Monday. So you can see all my rules here. I had this rule that I chose not to use at the last minute with Tyus or Rose, but I did have on my team limits on this slate, I had one Miami player, and I originally had one Milwaukee player, but I changed that so you can see that there's an arrow there. So I was just testing out, what would my 150 set have looked like had I run with those constraints and that shuffle and those rules, and what my total points would be. So once again, you can see the processing bar here, and it'll eventually populate the lineups with what our optimals would have been based on the projections that I was running with, and then what they actually scored. So you can sort of compare how you would have done under the actual results of Monday's games. So you can see the lineups populate here. And in this set, I was getting a ton of Tyreke Evans, who had a good 75th percentile projection. And you can see he and Eric Bledsoe were sort of tanking these lineups in a big way. So, I would have had lineups that range from 288 in this one. You kind of scroll down. You get to, maybe an occasional lineup without Eric Bledsoe, although he was in 52%. And you might get some better scores here. 317, looks like a 330 over here is what these actually would have done. And you can see what they were projected for in terms of like the 350 range. So underperformance on a lot of these lineups relative to the projections, because the players on Fanduel that were funneling in, guys like Eric Bledsoe, Ben Simmons, had kind of underwhelming performances. So yeah, this is one of the tools you can use at DailyRoto alongside optimizing for the current slate. You can go back and kind of double check and research how your past decisions would have gone as well with this ability to go back and look at other slates. So a little bit of a lengthy tutorial, a lot of things that we have available here at DailyRoto with our optimizer. We're super excited about all the growth we've made during the course of the season with this tool, and we hope you put it to good use during the rest of the NBA season. So that's it for Drew Dinkmeyer and DailyRoto.com. This was your NBA optimizer tutorial.